But yeah, this is the character. You see, the original idea. It's really rough. It follows the kind of like the same principles that I just showed you. It's like really, really rough. When you turn on the polypaint, it sort of helps defining things a little bit, especially with the colors. So, sorry, with the materials. But that's pretty much all there is. I went through this process of iterating, and I created this other one. So I added kind of like a, I don't know, like a clothing piece or like a jacket on top, and I just play around with the more of I had some reference for like these seahorses type of thing, so I just curled this bead a little bit, and it's a bit more interesting. But then working towards this gave me another idea. So let's load this up. So I have this other idea, but then I felt like this one was kind of like moving away or divorcing the whole idea from the whole idea of a much more realistic character that will fit within something like the Star Wars universe or a sci-fi movie. So I feel this one is a little bit silly. That's why I didn't go for that. But then if you compare it to the one that is the final one, I actually incorporated the eyes of these guys or a version of those eyes. Let me just show you. Because I think they add a lot of contrast and they're very, very impactful. And the only reason I created those eyes is because I went through this process, and even though this is not the final thing and I didn't like this at the end, one element of this process made it through the iteration. So hopefully that makes sense. So then I went into the polishing, and I'll show you what this looks like for the character. This is how I polish things. So you see, this one is still very, very sketchy. So this is still the Dynamesh. I haven't retopologized or applied any of these, right? And then you can see like, yeah, it's very, very sketchy. But the other pieces are exactly what I just showed you. So I have this bead that I extruded this, I retopologized it with the zero measure. I didn't do any manual retopology, all of that. This is exactly what I just showed you before. It's just a piece with dynamics of division, this one as well. So I just have like multiple pieces. And let's say if you want to create these ones, like multiple sections, right? You could just take something like this. You can, I'm going to clone it just so you can see this effect. You can take this, which is literally a dynamics of division, and then you can do the following. You can use this C modeler, and then you can hover over an edge. You can go to bevel, and let's say you can just bevel this and maybe this a little bit, right? Or, you can go crazy and do a bit more than that, but let's do it like this. And then you can just isolate something like that. Sorry, so isolate the green. Actually, let's make this one part of it, make it a bit more interesting. And I'm gonna delete lower, or delete the portion that I hit. And now I can use this dynamic to create those bits and pieces, apply the dynamic, and if I want to tighten those, I can use the inflate, for example. So let's do inflate. And that's it. We can also do clay polish to sharpen those edges. So this is like I said, there's a bunch of processes. The focus is not about how to do things, how to create those processes. That's kind of like what I left for the extra mile, so that you can go at your own pace if you join and all of that. But the what, the what and the why, I think is very, very important. Because the how you can just figure it out yourself. It's just that in the extra mile, for instance, I have packed all the years of experience that I have doing this in a super structured approach, so that you know exactly what the blueprint is and you know what the different paths you can take when you're doing this type of refinement. Anyway, so as you can see, it's very, very simple. It's the same sort of technique. In fact, for the goggles, and this is for someone that asked about the hard surface, what I like to do is work on a separate tool. So you can just clone this bit into a tool, and I'll just bring in this. And I worked on this separately, on this piece, I worked on this separately. And then once I'm ready with this base topology, again, this is more about the refining process. So then I copy and paste that into the work in progress. All right. Let me just show you the polishing, the details, and then the final stuff. And then hopefully we can do some questions. So this is the polished version. So the polished version just means that all of the pieces, they have already subdivision levels, and I have worked on the secondary forms, which is the important part. So if I click on all high, you see I have everything pretty clean, right? Everything is really clean in terms of the shapes. I haven't actually gone through the process of adding like these edges here. I think for the secondary forms, I was concentrating more on the head for the purpose of demoing here on the in the live session. But the idea would be to take the rest of the assets or the rest of the subtools and bringing them to the same level of polish as the head. And so you see all the secondary forms are a little bit better defined than the rest. So this is exactly the same process that I show you with that sort of goat character that we just created. So this is pretty much the same idea. Obviously, a little bit more time that I spent on this guy, but these are not details. These are secondary forms ready to go, right? So I have a nice balance. I'm happy with this, and then I can move on into details. So the details is super easy. I'm just gonna show you. These are the details. So once you have the base meshes, creating this type of details become like really, really easy because you can use alphas, you can use like custom brushes, which I use in this case for the head. But when you look at something like this and you're not sure about the process, you go like, oh, this will be like really hard for me to do it. Like it's so much patience, or this is really, really hard. You need to be like an expert to do this, and you need some time to get there and understand the process, but you don't need to be an expert, right? It's more about how you take those steps and you purposely put them together so that you can easily follow them. And one of those things is just going from something like this to a detailed character. So just to kind of like to prove my point, I'm just gonna show you with this head, right? I have some brushes. Again, you don't need to get these packs or anything like that. You can create your own. You can buy other packs or download free packs, or I have a bunch of these in the ZBrush guides that are free. But just to show you that it's just a matter of like setting things up. I'm gonna go for the creature skin. So I have a pack of brushes that I created for myself to do this type of stuff. So I'm gonna go for this creature skin, and I'm just going to tweak this a little bit, and I'm gonna create some kind of like lines in here. Right, so I just created those kind of like wrinkles very quickly, and then I want to do maybe some kind of like creature skin. I think I'm gonna go for let's go for this stuff, right? I don't think this is the one that I use, but it's something. It's something. um, so you see, I'm not like really spending too much time on detailing right now, but I will do this a little bit more consciously. It's just that using some of these tools, these brushes, that you can literally define the flow of the details makes it really, really easy. But this is purely to kind of like prove the point that if you want to do details, that's not the hard part. The hard part is what I show you in this workshop. The hard part is to make sure that you have an appealing character, that you have the primary shapes working, and that you know how to refine to get to the secondary forms. The details, you can just use these tools. It's not that hard, really. I'm just gonna add a couple more just to show you there's a bunch of different ways of going about it. And this becomes a little bit noisy and messy. So like I said, I'm doing this very quickly. You should really spend more time and not let the this is actually a very important point. Don't let a very simple and easy process overtake something that you spend a lot of time doing. So just because adding details with these brushes and this stuff is really simple or quick to do, doesn't mean that you need to go overboard with it. So you need to be very critical about where you add the details, where you add the stretching of the face, like pores and that sort of thing. So be very critical about where you add these details. So something like this could be very noisy, and it can actually be detrimental to the design, because then everything is screaming at you. Everything is telling you, look at me, look at me, look at me. And it's going back to that original idea that I mentioned on the Gestalt principle, that one of the things is form against background. So obviously the form is the character that we're doing, and the background is just this gray color. But in reality, that principle of the form versus background is happening within the composition of the character, meaning that when you start adding all these details, then everything becomes background, everything becomes noise, and there's not a form that is standing out. So just be very careful about how you apply it, and then you have that sort of nice balance between areas of rest and areas of details. So that's what I try to do here with the original. So you see there's some areas that are a little bit high, like larger bumps. Some of them are like a little bit softer here towards maybe the nostrils, and then it just goes into like these tiny ones, right? So that's just more food for thought, that I wanted to share with you. But the rest, like I said, is very, very simple. You can use alphas and stuff like that. And that is it, I think. So obviously, there's the other part of the process that I did mention that we were gonna cover very quickly, but it's just a matter of like doing the textures and the presentation renders. So I know that it's 12 o'clock already for me, so we've just been on an intense workshop of quite a few hours. So I know it is really late for some of you guys. I want to show you, if you want to test this out, I want to show you how you can do it. And then we'll actually, before I jump out of ZBrush, is there any questions relevant to this that I can answer now? And then I'll show you the last bit, which is how you can export these and try this yourself. Let's see. Brendan, is there anything that I missed? Let me just check the chat. Okay, so there are a few questions. Sorry, guys. I've been just concentrated on talking. So I'll just cover this, and Brendan, let me know if there's anything that I missed. So Tom is asking, if you're doing characters for illustration, do you have to retopologize or worry about UVs? You don't have to. You can just go ahead and do this. So this character is just one of the sketches that I just show you. I exported that with Polypaint, and I did a quick render to do presentation, and you can just, paint over this, and that would be it, right? But if you want to take advantage of tools that are more professional for texturing and gives you a lot of control, like Substance 3D Painter, for instance, there. Sorry. Oh, sorry. So if you want to take advantage of those tools, you need to have UVs, because that's just how they works. That's how the Painter software reads or understands the 3D environment to add the texture. So you need those. And the read topology, you don't really have to. I mean, you can. It's better. It will allow you to work a lot better, but you don't have to. It's just that with tools like the Series Mesher and all of that, it just makes it really easy. So even if you think it's hard, you just go through this process of understanding this process, or the process of understanding the tools and how they work, and then you just make it work for you. That's it. But you would need to if you want to use that. Is all the process made in ZBrush? Yeah, everything that I've shown you is only ZBrush. I only take this out into Painter when I want to do the details, or not the details, sorry, the textures, and sometimes details that come with the texture, and for render, but the rest is done in ZBrush. How do you approach the worn leather? Should I use clay brush or paint an uneven portions with clearer color? Yeah, I do. This is a lot of manual work, really. And you see, this is not even the highest subdivision level. So you can still see a little bit of the polygons. So this kind of like cuts, they're done with a damp standard brush, and this is clay brush, and this is a little bit of the standard brush. It's not like the most well-defined bit, as you can see, but it's just good enough to create the sense or the idea that this is leather. And the other kind of like mini wrinkles and memory faults, that's I think I can't remember. Actually, I do remember now. So I do have a pack of brushes called the drapery and clothing brushes. So I have some stuff here that might, yeah. So this fabric, this is kind of like a leather thing. Let's select this bit, and I'm gonna isolate that section just to show you. Yeah, so I can just do this, but you see how quick and easy that is. So I'll just add some details like that, and that just gives me kind of like a pattern to work with. And that doesn't mean that clicking and dragging this alpha will give you the details and that's it, move on to the next piece. You sometimes, when you add these details, it kind of like gives you another idea, and then you can capitalize on those. So now that I drag those things, I can go back to the damp standard brush, and I can say, all right, maybe this portion right here, this wrinkle is really prominent. So the reason, or I can think about why there is a prominent wrinkle there. It's probably because there's a broken edge in there, and then when the character opens or moves the arm up, it kind of like breaks in there. So I can just emphasize that a lot more, right? And it's still the same alpha, let's say, of the detail that I brought in, but then I can emphasize this. I can go to the clay brush and say, okay, let's break this a little bit more. But I'm just thinking from almost like a functional point of view that these things work or they're there for a reason. But it's a lot of manual work, right? So you see the difference between this, what I just did, and before. So nothing, something. So hopefully this makes sense. Let's see, one more question here.
Juan had a question about dynamic subdivision. Did you see that one?
Juan Molano, yeah, if you, for example, have a piece of clothing, so I made all the details in, and I have 4 or 5 subdivision levels, but then I noticed that I need to add thickness. How do I avoid losing details? So this is a very specific question. I'll show you, but it's very easy. So if you have, let me just see if I get this right. Let's say if you have this, which is a single-sided mesh, so a single plane, and I'm going to subdivide it to 4 levels of division or 5, right? And then let me just do some wrinkles here. All right, so let's say we have this nice piece of clothing, and then you go like, this is great. Now, how do I add thickness to it? So this is, again, like I said, more of a technical, practical stuff, but it is really easy. You can do it by saving the details or saving the history of this, creating the thickness, and then apply it. So this is one way of doing it. I'm just going to show you quickly. So you can click on that to save this. Then you can delete lower. Then you can add thickness with dynamic. Maybe this is like the complicated way of doing it. I just want to show you. You could potentially do it. Dynamic. Right, and then I will apply dynamic. Apply dynamic. Then I will do the retopology of it. And then subdivide this and then project history. And then you have that. So now you have the edges. The problem with this is sometimes, see, this happens because you're projecting a single-sided mesh. So this is one way of doing it. The simplest way, I would say, let's go back to a point before we had anything, right? So you have this and you want to add thickness. So what you can do is you can go to panel loop or edge loop. Yeah, this is where panel loop is. And then you can click on panel loop, and then you can reconstruct the topology. So you can click on this panel loops. Not panel loops, sorry. What am I looking at? Panel loops. Oh yeah, sorry. Delete lower panel loops, and that creates the thickness. You can control the thickness from this slider. Let's say like that. So now you have thickness. This is a little bit too much. All right, so you have now thickness, and then you want to do, what you want to do is recover that subdivision level. So this works really easy because it's a plane. So if we go back to geometry, reconstruct subdivision, so you can go back. Now, if you encounter this, which is, I'm clicking reconstruct and it's saying unable to reconstruct subdivision, that is because the math are not working. And, Dushko knows what the math is, so you can, tell you, he can tell you, but basically is, if I undo that, I need to make sure that I increase the amount of loops. So this amount of loops is the amount of edges that get created during the thickness process. So along the thickness of this clothing piece, they're going to be created 5 loops, which means that we need to match exactly the exponential subdivision, the Clark subdivision, in terms of how many loops we have compared to how many subdivision levels we have. I know this is a little bit weird, but all you need to do is maybe increase it to 7 or 8, I think. Panel loops, and then reconstruct. That should work. There we go. So now we reconstruct everything, the lowest subdivision, we have the highest subdivision, and then we have thickness as well. That's it. So hopefully that covers it. Cool. Oh, guys, there's a lot of questions. Let's just pick a couple of good ones that I can cover that are not so specific to processes, but more about like what we're talking about. Where do you usually render your models and videos? Yeah, I'm going to show you that in a bit. What's your preferred method of exporting high details sculpt substance? There's 5 ways that I show in the or 4 ways that I show in the extra mile of how to do it. It's just whatever works for you. All of them, I use them, all of them, depending on the project. The simplest one is export high res and low res, and that's it. And then project. So what I'll do is I'm going to go back to the goat thingy, if I can find it. There we go. But I'm going to export this sketch because the other ones don't have any mesh, or sorry, any polypin. And I just want to show you roughly what you can do with this. Right, so you have something very, very sketchy, very simple, but you want to create a quick render of this to try it out and see if it works. All you need to do really is you can go to C plugin, and right now I have like 2.8 million polygons in all the pieces, so it should be okay. Oh, sorry, no, it's just only 500 on this and the eyes, so it's pretty easy. So plugin FBX export. So I want to export this into my folder here for the workshop, and let's go ahead and call this one test. Doesn't matter. So that is going to export this as a test, and you can use, Marmoset Toolbag 4 is probably or 5 is probably the most powerful and easiest way of presenting a quick sketch like this. I prefer Maverick Render just because it's like my preferred go-to render, and it doesn't mean that I cannot generate the same quality in Marmoset. In fact, this is actually from Marmoset, just so you know. And some of the renders that I shared of this guy, they're actually from Marmoset, but you see I have it here as well. And this is actually one of the characters that we worked with the previous cohort of students in the extra mile. Let me just show you. It's really cool. Hopefully it's going to load. It's almost ready. So the idea is that this is render software allows you to import models with polypane and all of that. And the support team is really responsive as well. So I have a really good relationship with them. So like I can request like features. So this one, like the ZBrush button was added because I said, well, I can import things from ZBrush, but I cannot see it's a whole convoluted process to add the polypane. So they just added this thing where you can just import an FBX and that's it. So this software is a fantastic software to do rendering. It just like works really, really well. So this is one of the characters. Well, this is the character that we developed in the previous cohort of students with the extra mile. So it's a really cool made up character. We go through exactly the same process that I showed you. Obviously, if you were to join the extra mile next week when it opens, the character that we create is going to be completely different. We just go through the same process, but it's a made up thing. And I don't even know what I'm going to make, really. We go into the process of figuring out things together. And that's one of the cool things. It's just that this guy here is the character that we decided to go for based on the sketches that we created. But anyway, that's not the point. Let's create a new one. By the way, this is also covering the extra mile as one of the renders. So I show you like 5, 6, maybe more different renders to achieve the same result, because it's not about the tool, it's about how you feel about the workflow. So if you're more comfortable with Blender because you've been using Blender, I show you how to do it in cycles. If you want to try Maverick, by all means. If you want to stick with Keyshot because you come from a kind of like a product design or similar area, you can use that to produce the same idea. So what I'll do is I'll bring in that FBX that I exported. Where did I put it now? Here we go. So I'm going to drag and drop. No, I'm going to click on import, actually. And let's see. All right. So Maverick has this little preview window that allows you to preview the thing that you're going to import, and then you can define the scale. That's another thing that I don't worry about too much, especially during concepting, which is the scale. And I know it's very important, especially for consistency across different tools and everything. But in the concepting process, I know that if I want to do a render, and obviously I need to take into account the size of the model so that the subsurface scattering works better, the transmission, all of that stuff, I can do it at this time. So in Maverick, you just say, okay, this guy is 3.7 meters tall. Let's just make it, 37, nah, let's go for 500. A multiplier. So yeah, 1.8 meters, that's fine. Let's click on next, proceed. And it is just going to work. Like the lighting here is like super realistic. Now, because I didn't click on this button properly, this doesn't show the polypane, but I can just double click on this. In fact, let's create a new material. I'm just gonna create, let's create a standard material. Let's drag it, drop it in there. And then in the color here, I'm just going very quick. I'm not like giving you an insight into the software itself. I just want to show you how easy it is to go from one thing to another. And this one is probably the most complicated one compared to the Maverick. So in Maverick, you have this thing from color, and you need to bring in a thing called, where is it? Primvar. I cannot see it now. Sorry, here, Primvar. So I'm gonna click on that, and that allows you to bring in a different shading. So you just need to select vertex color, which is the polypane from ZBrush. So now that you can take that, and then you can play with, the specular. I wanna make this shiny, but I wanna make it rougher, like that. I'll do the same thing. Let's create one for the eyes. And let's give that to the eyes, and the eyes will be the same thing. So I'll just add a Primvar, but this material is obviously gonna be very specular, and the roughness is gonna be really low, so it's very shiny. Right, and then of course we can sort of add a backplate. If I were to present this, maybe something darker, so we can focus on the character itself. And let's find a better lighting scenario. So we can make it a little bit more cinematic. And one of the things that I like, for example, for this software is that you can do things very quickly. So, and everything works. If you just like stop moving things around, everything works. So I'm just like rotating the environment around, trying to find a nice reflection around the eyes. That's kind of like one of the main priorities. And I have most of the light coming from the left, so I can just create a new light, and then I just click on this icon right here, which is the normal light tool. And then I can just click anywhere, and it's based on the normal of the character. So I can just select something like this, and then I can use my mouse wheel. So if you look at my camera here, this is a vertical mouse, but I can use the scroll wheel, shift and control as well to bring in this closer. So this is just the scroll wheel. You can also use the shift and scroll wheel to change the size of the source of the light, and the control and scroll wheel to change the amount of light, like the intensity, right? So this is like a really cool way and simple way to light up your scenes. Yeah, so let's keep it simple. So coming from the side, right? And yeah, so this is obviously looks very, very sketchy and doesn't look very polished at all. But if I were to just present this, and I'm working, this is another really important point, I guess. When you're doing this process of iteration and creating sketches, you also have to think about who you're working with. So if I have a very talented, art director, I can send him something like that, right? Or can send that person this sketch, and he or she will just go, look, this is going in the right direction. Let's work on the skin color, right? Because they understand that this is a step to something more polished, right? They understand that this is part of the iteration process, and this is something quickly that I can turn over in in 15, 20 minutes. I can do some iteration and say, hey, what about this, right? So they understand that. But if you're working with someone that maybe just a recruiter, or like someone that doesn't really understand the process, then if you send something like this, they will go like, oh, doesn't look as polished as what we were hoping. So you need to be very clear about, like, this is just a process for iterating and telling you what we're going for, but it's not the final piece. The final piece is, and you can send them a reference to something that have you done in the past, it's going to be the quality of this. We just need to make sure that this is the type of character that you want, right? And that allows you to explore more things and be very clear about the process. And this is just a thought about, in case you're working with a studio or something like that. Anyway, let's close this. Just wanted to show you how it's done.